one single phrase that describes Dorothy Lloyd to me. She was a class act. Those of you who knew her, you know she was impeccably dressed at all times. Stylish. She was polite and courteous and warm and interested in everyone around her. She carried herself with a certain grace and calm composure that we all envy. She was one of 3 children, a brother Buddy who died when he was just 11 years old, and a sister Mildred, who I'm happy to tell you is here with us today. Mildred, a little bit. She grew up in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. She met the love of her life, Jim Lloyd, at Sellers Church, and they were married when she was 21 years old. She basically dedicated her life to her children. When I met Lee, he told me that he had had a Leave It to Beaver upbringing, and the more I learned about it, I think it was right on target. As the 2 boys grew older, she supported them in every way she could. Lee remembers her clearing out all the furniture from the kitchen so she could help him practice dancing before his dance class. She was also very cool and calm one day when Tom came running home, having cut his hand with an axe at his friend Tommy Gannon's. And she and Jim had a great marriage. Jim was a conscientious objector in World War II, a fairly unusual time to be that way, and he was just a very peaceful man, except when he got behind the wheel of a car. As he would be yelling at people in surrounding cars, Dorothy would calmly say, "Jim, I just wish you wouldn't do that." And Tom and Lee tell me that that's the closest they heard to an argument that their parents ever had. But even the calmest person gets rattled sometimes. And one day when Tom was about 16 years old, he did something that infuriated her. She took her shoe off and went after him. But at 16, Tom was already 6 foot tall, and all of a sudden she looked at him and then just cracked up laughing. Dorothy was all about her boys and fiercely loyal to them. While she was attending one of Lee's basketball games, she heard a fan criticizing something that Lee did in the game, and she couldn't handle it, so she never went to another game. When Lee was in college, his sophomore year, he got an apartment with a bunch of guys, and one day Jim and Dorothy went to visit. She walked in, she took one look around, and she said, "This place is filthy." So she took off her high heels and vacuumed the whole apartment before she would sit on the furniture. When Jim and Dorothy entered their golden years, they retired to Mission Valley, San Diego. They played golf in Chula Vista, Torrey Pines, and La Jolla. It was their dream come true. They had 3 good years there before Jim's illness with Alzheimer's became more apparent. He had actually been diagnosed with it at the young age of 65. As his disease progressed, Dorothy became his caretaker, 24 hours a day for 16 years. And as we mentioned in the obituary, she never complained. For her, it was a labor of love. After Jim died in 1991, instead of being relieved of the burden of caring for him, she volunteered weekly to take care of another Alzheimer's patient so that his family could have a break. When she moved to Delaware in 2002, she enrolled in the Academy of Lifelong Learning, which is right here in this very center, and the reason that we selected this location for the service. She was a great lover of learning, and this was an ideal way for her to spend her time. She totally enjoyed it. She got a big kick out of hearing from talks from Tom Carper and Joe Biden and Mike Castle and some of our other famous locals, and ended up being able to tell us a whole lot more about Delaware than we knew, and I'm a native. Dorothy wasn't cheap by any means, but she did always want to get her money's worth. She always wanted to carry a full load of classes because you paid the same amount if you took one class as if you took the entire 4. Sometimes she couldn't work out the schedule so that her courses were consecutive, so there'd be one at 9, one at 1, you know. So we would say, why don't you just take 2 or 3 this semester? No, she would rather be here all day, thank you, and get her money's worth. A few years ago, her dentist told her that she needed some important but pretty extensive and expensive dental work done. She said, absolutely not. At the age of 85, that's not a good return on investment. She reminded us of a family friend who spent $10,000 on dental implants and died 2 years later, and she wasn't having any of that. As reserved and demure as she could often be, she would get the giggles sometimes. And sometimes it was for no apparent reason or some small thing. And she would start giggling and she absolutely just couldn't stop. And before you knew it, we'd all be laughing around her. And no one knew what about. One of those times we got laughing pretty good was when we were visiting her sister Mildred. Dorothy was taking the water aerobics classes at the time, and she decided to demonstrate the crab walk she had learned in class. Well, she fell and broke the glass that encased the doll that her sister Mildred, part of her sister Mildred's collection. From then on, we didn't let her demonstrate anything. Just tell us, Dorothy, you don't need to show us. Dorothy was a worrier. She worried about everything. She worried about things that you probably couldn't even think of. She worried about us scuba diving, skiing. She worried if any of us were flying anywhere. She worried if we were driving anywhere. If we were starting a new job, she worried about it, you name it. But one time really did take the cake. We went to pick her up for Sunday brunch, and she told us that she couldn't sleep the night before because she was thinking about us walking across the Walnut Street Bridge to the train station and what would happen if the bridge went up when we were in the middle of it. Dorothy was intensely interested in what was going on in the world. She was well-read and an avid viewer of C-SPAN and public television. She could converse on any subject, and she loved to do that. There were many, many long talks in the Lloyd family about politics, the war, the various scandals going on, and she usually had the most knowledge on pretty much any subject. Dorothy moved into Ingleside Assisted Living about 2 years ago, and I see some of you here. Thank you for coming. She was true to herself there. She worried about everybody there. She was always getting in trouble with the nurses because she, who was walking with a cane herself, would be found pushing another resident in his wheelchair down the hallway. Well, he needed to get back to his room, is what she would say, and no one else was helping him. One of the residents she always wanted to help had Alzheimer's and frequently got lost. One day when we were picking her up for brunch, she made Lee and me wait. Just a minute, I'll be right back, she said. And she went over and took this woman's arm, walked her all the way back to her room. What a beautiful picture that was. I haven't mentioned that Dorothy had breast cancer. Yes, she had a mastectomy in 1958 when she was only 38 years old, and another one in 1976 when she was 56 years old. I didn't mention it because, while describing her life, because that's how she treated it, as an afterthought. She was stoic. She was part of the Great Generation. She'd have each surgery, followed by the necessary chemo, and never looked back. The breast cancer did return, and it is what eventually took her life. When she was faced with the decision to end her treatment and enter hospice, she did it with the same class that she demonstrated throughout her life. She made her decision, and she never looked back. Yes, that was Dorothy Lloyd. We will always remember her as a class act.